Bullies target the new kid. They didn't know he was a mixed martial arts champion. Rafael Nowak hunched his shoulders as he navigated the crowded hallway of Westlake High School. At 15, he was small for his age, 5'6" and skinny, with pale skin that flushed too easily. His dark hair fell across his eyes, providing a shield between him and the world. As a Polish immigrant who had arrived in America just 3 months ago, his accent was still thick, making him hesitate before speaking. This was Rafael's 4th day at Westlake. So far, he'd managed to blend into the background, finding a seat at the edge of the cafeteria during lunch and keeping his eyes on his textbooks during class. The language barrier made everything harder. He understood most of what was said, but forming responses quickly enough to participate in class discussions was another matter. His English teacher, Mrs. Patel, was patient, but he could feel the other students' restlessness whenever she called on him. What no one at Westlake knew, what no one in America knew except his parents, was that back in Warsaw, Rafael had been a junior MMA champion 3 years running. His father, a former national wrestling champion, had started training him when he was 5. By the time he was 12, Rafael was competing in mixed martial arts tournaments throughout Eastern Europe. His combination of wrestling, Muay Thai, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had made him virtually unbeatable in his weight class. But when his father's IT job transferred the family to the United States, Rafael had decided to reinvent himself. No more fighting, no more competitions. He wanted to focus on his studies, improve his English, and maybe someday become a doctor. His parents supported this decision, telling him that in America, he could be whoever he wanted to be. Just get her through the day without trouble, Rafael thought as he headed toward his locker. Just be invisible for a few more weeks until you get better at speaking. Well, look who it is, the commie. The voice came from behind him, loud enough to make several nearby students turn. Rafael recognized it immediately. Dylan Mercer, a junior and linebacker on the football team. Dylan was 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and a permanent smirk. He traveled with 2 constant companions, Trent Collins, almost as big as Dylan but quieter, and Marcus Webb, thin and wiry with a nervous laugh. Rafael kept walking, pretending not to hear. "Hey, I'm talking to you, Russian boy," Dylan called. Louder this time, Rafael stopped and turned. "I am Polish, not Russian," he said quietly. Dylan laughed, glancing at Trent and Marcus to make sure they were appreciating his wit. "Whatever. Communist, socialist, same thing." He stepped closer. "What's in the bag? Bomb-making materials?" A few onlookers tittered nervously. Rafael felt his face grow hot. "Just books," he said, gripping his backpack strap tighter. In Warsaw, he would have already taken a fighting stance, but his father's words echoed in his mind. "In America, we start fresh. No fighting unless absolutely necessary for defense." "Let me see," Dylan said, reaching for the bag. Rafael stepped back. "No." Dylan's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "I said no." Rafael's heart was pounding, but not from fear, from the effort of restraint. For a moment, Dylan seemed surprised by the resistance. Then his face hardened. "You don't get to say no here, immigrant." He shoved Rafael hard, sending him stumbling backward into the lockers with a loud clang. Instinctively, Rafael caught himself, his body automatically shifting into a balanced stance. He felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, the tightening of his muscles preparing to counter. Then he remembered where he was and forced himself to slump against the lockers instead. "Not here, not now, this isn't Warsaw." Dylan laughed, clearly interpreting Rafael's restraint as weakness. "That's what I thought." He glanced around at the gathering crowd, playing to his audience. "Stay in your lane, commie." The bell rang, dispersing the onlookers. Dylan and his friends sauntered away, laughing. Rafael remained against the lockers for a moment, breathing deeply, waiting for his heartbeat to slow. "It's nothing," he told himself. "Just words." But something in him knew this was only the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Dylan and his friends made Rafael's life increasingly difficult. It started with accidental bumps in the hallway, escalated to tripping him in the cafeteria, and soon included daily mockery of his accent. Dylan had taken to imitating Rafael whenever he spoke in class, exaggerating his pronunciation to make others laugh. Mrs. Patel had noticed and reprimanded Dylan once, but that had only made things worse. Now Dylan was careful to harass Rafael when teachers weren't looking. The cafeteria became the worst battlefield. On Monday, Dylan knocked Rafael's tray from his hands, sending his lunch scattering across the floor. "Oops," Dylan said innocently. "Guess they don't teach balance in communist countries." Tuesday, they stole his backpack during gym class and hung it from the basketball hoop. Coach Brennan made Dylan get it down, but not before most of the class had witnessed Rafael's humiliation. By Wednesday, Rafael had started keeping a tally in his mind of all the moves he could have used to drop Dylan to the ground. A sweep to the ankle when Dylan bumped him, an elbow strike when Dylan cornered him in the bathroom, a simple wrist lock when Dylan grabbed his backpack. Each night he trained in the garage of their rented house, hitting the punching bag his father had installed, drilling the techniques that had once made him a champion, not to prepare for a fight, just to release the tension, he told himself. His mother noticed his darkening mood. "Is everything okay at school?" she asked in Polish as they washed dishes together. "Yes, everything's fine," he answered in English. They had agreed to speak English at home to help him improve. "You seem angry," Rafael shrugged, just frustrated with the language. "It's getting better." He didn't tell her about Dylan. He didn't tell his father either. They had both worked so hard to start this new life, taking lower positions than they had held in Poland just to give him this opportunity. He wouldn't disappoint them by getting into trouble. At school, he started noticing other students who watched the bullying with uncomfortable expressions. One girl in particular, Nadia Chen, who sat next to him in biology, gave him sympathetic looks but never spoke up. Once she helped him gather his books after Dylan knocked them from his desk, but she did it quickly and silently, as if afraid to be associated with him. "Thank you," Rafael had said. "They're jerks," she whispered, then hurried away. It wasn't much, but knowing someone saw what was happening and didn't find it amusing gave Rafael a small comfort. By the third week, Rafael had developed strategies for avoiding Dylan and his friends. He mapped out alternative routes between classes, ate lunch in the library when he could, and made himself scarce during free periods. It wasn't ideal, but it kept confrontations to a minimum. Then came the day of the chemistry lab. Mr. Voss assigned partners, and through some cosmic joke, Rafael was paired with Marcus Webb, the smallest of Dylan's trio. Marcus was visibly unhappy about the arrangement, but to Rafael's surprise, he didn't cause any problems during the lab. In fact, he seemed relieved to be working with someone who understood the material. Rafael had always been good at sciences, and chemistry was no exception. "So, you're pretty smart, huh?" Marcus said as Rafael correctly calculated the molarity of their solution. Rafael shrugged. "I like chemistry." "Look," Marcus said, lowering his voice, "maybe lay low tomorrow. Dylan's planning something after gym. Just don't go to your locker. Right after class." Rafael looked up, surprised. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Just don't want to see anyone get hurt." "That's all." He quickly changed the subject. "So what do we do next with this solution?" The warning unsettled Rafael, but he was grateful for it. The next day, he avoided his locker after gym as advised. From around the corner, he watched as Dylan and Trent waited nearby, a water bottle filled with something suspicious in Dylan's hand. When Rafael didn't show, they eventually gave up and left. Marcus, standing a few feet behind them, caught Rafael's eye briefly before following his friends. Maybe not everyone is an enemy here, Rafael thought, but the near miss seemed to infuriate Dylan. The following day, he escalated his campaign. During lunch, he approached Rafael's isolated table, flanked by Trent and a reluctant-looking Marcus. "Where were you yesterday, Commie? We missed you." Dylan's voice was loud enough to attract attention from nearby tables. Rafael continued eating, his sandwich, not looking up. "Please leave me alone. Please leave me alone," Dylan mimicked in an exaggerated accent. "You know, I'm getting really tired of foreigners coming to our school, taking up space, probably getting special treatment because you can't speak English properly." Several students were watching now. From the corner of his eye, Rafael saw Nadia Chen at a nearby table, her expression concerned. "I don't want trouble," Rafael said quietly. "Well, that's too bad, because trouble found you." Dylan grabbed Rafael's milk carton and poured it over his sandwich. "Oops, clumsy me." Rafael felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the tightening in his chest that preceded action in the ring. He stood slowly. "Not here," he reminded himself. "Not yet." He gathered his now ruined lunch and turned to leave. "Running away just like your people always do, right?" Dylan called after him. Rafael stopped, turned. For the first time, he met Dylan's eyes directly. Something in his gaze made Dylan blink. "You know nothing about my people," Rafael said, his accent thicker with emotion. "And nothing about me." He walked away, feeling Dylan's stare on his back. The cafeteria had gone quiet. That was a mistake, Rafael thought. You showed him too much. He was right. The next day, Dylan and his friends were waiting by Rafael's locker before school started. "Thought you were tough yesterday, didn't you?" Dylan said, his voice low. Rafael said nothing, tried to reach around to open his locker. Trent shoved him back. "We don't like your attitude, Kami," Dylan continued. So after school today we're going to fix it behind the gym. If you don't show up, we'll find you tomorrow and the next day, and it'll be worse each time. This is stupid, Raphael said. I have done nothing to you. Your existence is enough, Dylan replied. 3 o'clock. Be there. They walked away, high-fiving each other. Raphael stood at his locker, a cold certainty settling over him. This was inevitable now. No amount of avoidance would stop it. Throughout the day, word spread about the after-school meeting. Raphael noticed people looking at him with a mixture of pity and curiosity. In biology, Nadia passed him a note. Don't go. Tell a teacher. He appreciated her concern, but knew it wouldn't help. If he reported Dylan, it would only delay the inevitable. And telling teachers would brand him as a snitch on top of everything else. During the final period, Raphael texted his mother that he would be late coming home, claiming a study group. Then he went to his locker, put away all his books, and removed his watch and the small cross necklace his grandmother had given him. He didn't need distractions. At 3 o'clock, a sizable crowd had gathered behind the gym, a secluded area, with a brick wall on one side and dense trees on the other, invisible from the main school buildings. Dylan and his friends arrived to cheers from several other athletes. Raphael was already there, standing quietly, his back against the wall. Look who decided to show up for his beating, Dylan announced, playing to the crowd. He removed his letterman jacket and handed it to Trent. Hold this, I don't want commie blood on it. Raphael remained still, his face expressionless. Inside, he was conducting the mental preparation he'd done before every match, controlling his breathing, centering his weight, focusing his mind. This isn't a match, he reminded himself. There are no referees, no rules. Don't hurt him permanently. Just enough to end this. Dylan approached, confidence in every step. Any last words before I rearrange your face? Raphael finally spoke, his voice calm. In my country, we do not talk so much before fighting. Dylan's face twisted with rage. He lunged forward, throwing a wild haymaker aimed at Raphael's head. What happened next left the crowd in stunned silence. Raphael moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for his slight frame. He slipped Dylan's punch effortlessly, then countered, with a swift palm strike to Dylan's sternum that sent the larger boy staggering backward, gasping for air. Dylan's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in fury. He charged again, more cautiously this time, feinting with his left before throwing his right. Raphael parried the blow and executed a perfect sweep, sending Dylan crashing to the ground. The crowd gasped. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Dylan scrambled to his feet, his face red with humiliation and anger. You're dead, he growled, and signaled to Trent. Get him. Trent hesitated, but a glare from Dylan sent him moving forward. He and Dylan circled Raphael from opposite sides. Raphael remained calm, pivoting to keep both in view. When they rushed him simultaneously, he was ready. He ducked Trent's grab, used the bigger boy's momentum to send him stumbling into Dylan, then delivered a sharp kick to Dylan's side as they disentangled. Dylan went down again, clutching his ribs. Trent backed away, hands raised. What the hell? Someone in the crowd muttered. Others were recording on their phones now. Raphael hadn't even broken a sweat. He stood in the center of the space, his stance relaxed but ready. Dylan struggled to his feet, fury and pain contorting his features. You think you're tough, he spat. Marcus, get the bat from my car. A murmur went through the crowd. This was escalating beyond the usual school fight. Marcus stood frozen. Dylan, man, that's too far. Get the bat, Dylan repeated. No. Marcus shook his head. This is messed up. He's not even fighting back for real. Dylan looked around, saw the uncertain faces in the crowd. Fine, he snarled, pulling something from his pocket. The metallic glint of a knife blade caught the afternoon sun. Several students backed away. Someone said, whoa, put that away. But Dylan was beyond reason, his pride shattered. He lunged at Raphael with the knife. What the crowd witnessed next would become school legend. Raphael moved like water, like he'd been facing knives his entire life. He redirected Dylan's arm, twisted, and suddenly Dylan was on the ground, his arm locked in Raphael's grip, the knife fallen useless beside him. Raphael applied just enough pressure to make Dylan cry out. Drop the knife and this ends, Raphael said. Calmly, Dylan struggled against the hold, but each movement only increased his pain. Finally, he went limp. Okay. Raphael maintained the hold for a moment longer, then released him and stepped back. It is finished. No more. Dylan sat up, rubbing his arm, his face a mask of humiliation and defeat. The crowd was silent, watching. Then a slow clapping started. Everyone turned to see Coach Brennan standing at the edge of the trees, his expression grave. Show's over, he announced. Everyone clear out now unless you want detention for the rest of the year. The crowd dispersed quickly. Coach pointed at Dylan, Trent, and Rafael. "You three, my office now." He bent to pick up the knife. "And this is going straight to the principal." As they walked toward the gym, Rafael noticed Nadia standing under a tree, her eyes wide. She gave him a small nod that contained something like respect. In Coach Brennan's office, Dylan tried to spin the story. "He attacked us first, Coach. We were just defending ourselves." Coach Brennan held up his phone. "Save it, Mercer. I've got 4 different videos in my inbox already showing exactly what happened." He turned to Rafael. "Where did you learn to fight? Like that, son?" Rafael hesitated, then decided the truth was simpler. "I was junior MMA champion in Poland for 3 years." Coach whistled. "Well, that explains a lot." He looked at Dylan and Trent. "You two are looking at suspension minimum. Bringing a weapon to school, that's potential expulsion." Dylan paled. "Coach, please. My scholarship should have thought about that before pulling a knife." "Coach," said unsympathetically, "the principal will make the final decision." He turned to Rafael. "As for you, technically you were defending yourself, but fighting on school grounds is still against the rules. 1 week detention." Rafael nodded, accepting the punishment without argument. "Now get out of here, all of you. Report to the principal's office first thing tomorrow." As they left the office, Dylan kept his distance from Rafael, the swagger gone from his step. Trent mumbled, "Sorry, man," as he hurried after his friend. Rafael walked slowly back to his locker. The hallways were empty, but he could feel the change already. Nothing would be the same after today. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Everything okay? When will you be home?" He texted back, "We'll be home soon. Everything is okay now." And, strangely, he felt it was true. The next day at school, the videos of the fight had spread everywhere. As Rafael walked the halls, students moved aside, some nodding respectfully, others watching warily. He heard whispers follow him. "Champion fighter. Took down Dylan and Trent by himself. Didn't even break a sweat." The principal had called his parents that morning. Rafael had explained everything, the weeks of bullying, the threats, the final confrontation. His father had been quiet, but Rafael could see a mixture of pride and concern in his eyes. "You controlled yourself," his father had said afterward, in Polish. "You did only what was necessary. That's more important than any fight you've won." Dylan and Trent were suspended for 2 weeks. Dylan faced a disciplinary hearing that could result in expulsion. The knife had changed everything. Lunch, Rafael sat at his usual isolated table, but not for long. Marcus approached, tray in hand. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Rafael gestured to the empty chair. "Look," Marcus said, "I want you to know I never liked the way Dylan treated you. I should have said something sooner." "You warned me about the locker," Rafael pointed out. "That was something," Marcus nodded. "Yeah, but not enough." He hesitated. "I've been thinking about quitting the team. I don't want to be associated with that kind of behavior anymore." Before Rafael could respond, Nadia appeared with 2 friends. "Is this seat taken?" she asked, indicating the rest of the table. "No," Rafael said, surprised. "Please sit." More students joined them, some curious, others genuinely friendly. For the first time since arriving at Westlake, Rafael found himself in conversation with his peers. He spoke carefully, still self-conscious about his accent, but no one mocked him. "You should join the MMA club," one boy suggested. "We're not very good, but with you maybe we could actually win some competitions." "I will think about it," Rafael said. He had missed competing, missed the discipline and challenge of it. After school, as he was leaving, he spotted Dylan's father escorting him from the principal's office. Dylan's head was bowed, his father's expression stern. For a moment, Rafael felt a twinge of sympathy. He knew what it was like to disappoint a parent. When Dylan looked up and saw Rafael, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. But then, something shifted in his expression. Not quite acceptance, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. He gave a small nod before following his father out. That weekend, Rafael's father helped him look for a local MMA gym where he could resume training. "You were right to defend yourself," his father said as they drove. "But skill like yours needs proper direction. If you're going to fight, do it in the ring where there are rules and respect." Rafael agreed. The confrontation with Dylan had awakened something in him. Not a desire for violence, but a reconnection with the discipline that had shaped him. He didn't want to hide who he was anymore. When school resumed on Monday, the immediate sensation had faded, but the change in Rafael's status was permanent. Teachers noticed his increased participation in class, his growing confidence. Students sought his company, asked about his training, invited him to join study groups and social gatherings. 3 weeks later, Dylan returned to school. He was subdued, his friends uncertain how to act around him after his fall from grace. He had been allowed to remain on the team only under strict probation. In the cafeteria, Dylan approached Rafael's now crowded table. Conversations died as he stopped a few feet away. "Can I talk to you?" he asked Rafael. "Alone?" Rafael considered, then nodded and walked with Dylan to a quiet corner. "I want to say I'm sorry," Dylan said, the words coming with difficulty. "What I did was wrong, all of it." Rafael studied him, looking for sincerity. "Why did you do it?" Dylan shrugged uncomfortably. "I don't know, because you were different. Because you were an easy target." He met Rafael's eyes briefly. "Because I could, I guess." "Not anymore," Rafael said quietly. "No," Dylan agreed. "Not anymore." He hesitated. "Coach says you might join the team if they start an MMA program. That true?" "Maybe. I am considering it." Dylan nodded. "That would be good. You've got serious skills." Another pause. "Anyway, I just wanted to say sorry, and that it won't happen again. Not to you, not to anyone else." Rafael extended his hand. "Then it is forgotten." Dylan seemed surprised by the gesture but shook his hand firmly. As Dylan walked away, Nadia appeared at Rafael's side. "That was big of you," she said, forgiving him after everything. Rafael watched Dylan rejoin a subdued Trent at a far table. "In fighting, we learn that holding grudges only weighs you down. Better to let go and move forward." "Is that a Polish saying?" she asked with a small smile. "No," he laughed. "That is just me." Back at their table, Marcus had saved Rafael's seat. "Everything cool?" he asked as Rafael sat down. "Yes," Rafael said. "Everything is cool." Later that day, Rafael passed Mrs. Patel in the hallway. She smiled at him. "Your English is improving rapidly, Rafael, and you seem much more comfortable here." "Now, thank you," he said. "I feel more myself." And it was true. The path to finding his place at Westlake had been unexpected and difficult, but he had emerged stronger for it. Not because he had fought, but because he had finally stopped hiding who he was. That evening, as he helped his mother prepare dinner, she commented on the change in him. "You seem happier, more like the boy from Warsaw." Rafael smiled. "I am still that boy," he said in Polish, "just in a new place." Sometimes, he thought, you have to stand and fight to find peace. The real victory wasn't defeating Dylan, it was finding the confidence to be himself, to build a new life without abandoning the strength of his old one, and that was worth every moment of struggle.